Today, on episode 112 of the Unnecessary Nonsense podcast, it's time for a backtrack. So, you know that thing we discussed about story? Never mind, forget I said anything. WWE has proven that no, random matches are the way to go. No story, forget story, never had stories, no idea what you're talking about. More on that on this episode of the Unnecessary Nonsense podcast. Anti-story Carlos, and that's Davaid.
Notice. I think we might keep it now. Because why not?
We may as well. Listen, the Sheik has already decreed you. He basically declared you should just legally change your name to Davaid.
Maybe I will, right? I mean, once the Iron Sheik Christians you that, I mean, you can't really argue with it.
Like, honestly, you just tell them that, and then we'll put the paperwork through immediately. Done.
Yeah, you just call them up. Iron Sheik says my name's this now. Done.
That's beautiful. I like it. At least it resolves our too many Daves. Davaid doesn't count anymore. That's a different thing entirely. There's one less Dave. Now we've resolved some of the logjam. We can proceed going forward. So real quick. So let me kind of explain. So this one is going to be a little bit more of an out of time episode. I am going to refer to a couple of things directly related to some of the stuff that WWE's done recently. And part of the conversation we had the other week with the whole AEW thing and like how we want to see them build and develop some stories. The general principle is still true, but WWE has proven that sometimes not less is more. Sometimes nothing is more. Sometimes negative is more. Just stop. And I'll give you a couple of different examples and we'll kind of talk through them and kind of work on it. So I don't watch most of WWE's programming, but I do keep an eye. It's one of those things where I still want to understand what's going on. I still want to have a general understanding. And if there's a storyline or something that may be at least of some interest, I'll catch a clip or I'll watch, a segment of the match or whatever the case may be so that I'm at least up to date on what's going on. Mm-hmm. Now, the critique we had with AEW is that a lot of times they'll just put some matches together. But AEW does have a bit of a cop-out in the sense that you do have a ranking system. So much like UFC can pair these people up, sometimes it's like, well, this person and this person are kind of similarly in the rankings. We can put a match together because we're still trying to book a television show. Like at the end of the day, we're still trying to fill a certain amount. Not everybody can have an ongoing storyline. Otherwise, there's too many moving parts. The other thing is that Tony Khan over time will have to start delegating stuff, which I made reference to, because it will get too complicated to keep track of an A story, a B story, a C story, and a D story over 2 shows. It's too much for any human being to do. It's unfair. So I think he's going to have to learn that lesson. And once he does that, it will help and it'll make things a lot easier. But that being said, at least some people do have some storylines. And regardless of what we can say, at least most of the storylines have some kind of a logical progression and things do move in a linear fashion. Our good friends at WWE, they put a special emphasis on character. And I made fun of back then, a couple of weeks ago, where Becky Lynch talked about how, story is the thing, and not Canadian destroyers. And I was like, you know what, Becky, maybe we should do more Canadian destroyers because your storyline sucks. And so do a couple of other ones. And allow me to explain why. So first I'm going to use this one before I get to the Becky Lynch one. Let's use our friend Alexa Bliss because she has an ongoing long-term storyline. Because you can actually go back. We just had the Extreme Rules pay-per-view recently. And the Extreme Rules pay-per-view prior to that is where they introduced the idea of Alexa Bliss being a premonition or a hallucination as part of the Bray Wyatt and Braun Strowman feud at the time. Both guys no longer with the company, by the way. Mm-hmm. But the point is, as part of this feud, she was a hallucination as Sister Abigail. So Sister Abigail was calling to Braun Strowman and it became, and it turned out it was Alexa Bliss or a vision of Alexa Bliss.
Right. Yep.
Within a couple of months, she would become associated with The Fiend. They had a storyline. By the way, this is the long-term storyline. This went on for months. The development of her with The Fiend and then her with Bray Wyatt and kind of associated the two of them. And then eventually Bray Wyatt was gone. She turned on Bray Wyatt at WrestleMania. They did this whole thing. Bray Wyatt ended up getting, cut. And we'll see what his fate and his future is going forward. But regardless, the Alexa Bliss character then continued on without Bray Wyatt and incorporated the doll Lily and this whole stupidity with that. Mm-hmm. Regardless, though, the idea here, if we cut it down to its simplest form without all the unnecessary detail, you don't need to watch all of this. I gave you the brief synopsis, but all you need to understand is that effectively Alexa Bliss is some combination of either possessed or a witch or something. The point is there's some supernatural powers involved.
Yeah, some kind of supernatural something is going on.
Yeah, that's the best we can do. We don't know the nature of it anymore because it's gotten so convoluted. I'm actually confused. I actually don't understand what the point is other than she has powers. That's the important part. She has powers.
Which she doesn't use to win in the ring.
I'm about to get to that. The point is that her powers and Lily's powers are so mighty. If you recall, we discussed this because we made fun of it, was that at one point the doll was like terrorizing Shayna Baszler, and that led to nothing. Shayna Baszler's still out and about doing her thing. Apparently that's not a thing. But much like Bray Wyatt before her, you've got all these crazy spooky powers, and how ironic that we're in October and right now she's going to be off for a little while. But spooky, scary time that literally never leads to winning anything that matters. When it comes down to something important or a championship or whatever, it doesn't matter. It doesn't help. So supernatural spookiness is not undefeated. It is winless in relevant matches in WWE. On a related note, Demon Finn Balor, who he brought back because that was originally a thing a couple of years ago. This is the first 2 years since he brought back this whole Fiend character, which is another supernatural, spooky whatever. Lost to Roman Reigns because, and this is exactly what happened, he was down, and then all of a sudden they decided to do some theatrics. They put on red lights, they played his theme song, and then he convulsed, and that restored the demon. This is all during the Roman Reigns match for the title.
Okay.
Then that restores him, and then he gets up on the top rope to go do the coup de grace, and he's about to win, and the rope breaks, and he falls down, and he's like clutching his knee. He's a demon who's like, ow, my knee! Even though he got like resurrected 3 seconds ago. Did I mention spooky things in WWE mean nothing? Supernatural powers mean nothing. The demon is garbage. You know why? Because he lost because, ow, my knee! And then Roman Reigns beats him. Now, from a practical standpoint, I understand. The money match is him and Brock Lesnar. I understand this was, you're buying some time. But you do realize that the whole thing...
Don't bring the demon back.
That's my point. My point is, the demon originally was this alter ego for Finn Balor who would actually win. But he just established that he was undone by a top rope. After being resurrected earlier in the match. By the way, a second ago, you established that he could be resurrected from a horrific fall or something. And now the top rope did him in, ow, my knee! During the same match.
Maybe he should have just tried to give him a high knee.
Clearly. But here's the thing. So, 2 different versions, both idiotic. We've proven that supernatural powers are worthless in WWE. They're garbage. The only person who's ever successfully used supernatural powers is The Undertaker and Kane, probably. That's it. Nobody else. Papa Shango did not elevate past a certain point. Spooky, scary powers do not help you. They don't. And the important thing, so you've got Finn Balor, whose demon needs to be shelved. You got Alexa Bliss, who's a witch or something and needs to go back to Hogwarts and learn how to use her powers properly because right now it's bullshit. It doesn't work.
Like, you got powers that you would think, like, the one thing you're going to use them to do is win a match.
But just to be clear, 2 things. Both of these wrestlers that I just talked about, Alexa Bliss and Finn Balor, both have been champions without powers. Alexa Bliss is like a 5-time women's champion. She was able to win before she got spooky powers. She actually won multiple championships. She was the first woman to have a SmackDown and a Raw Women's Championship. When they did the brand split, she was the first one to win both of those damn belts. So apparently she knew how to win before, but now with spooky powers, she sucks. This is stupid. This is really dumb. But it's a long-term storyline. No, garbage, trash.
Where does it take you, right?
They spent months on this. Building up this whole backstory, Alexa's play, like they built sets for this garbage. They came up with a doll that they sell in the store. They made merch. It's all trash. All trash. Now, one of the things that you put in the message is that you kind of said it, I hope tongue in cheek, I don't know. But you said, with AEW's rating not being as high as you kind of thought. By the way, rating expectations for fans, just to be clear, are pointless. And I'll explain afterwards, after I finish with my story rant, because I want to finish that first.
All right,
but
fair enough.
Ratings things are really a difficult thing to do because there are factors outside of that, and I will touch on that in a moment. But the point is, WWE did all this shit. They hot-shotted a thing where Big E cashed in his money in the bank, became champion. People like Big E. He's a great guy, a great character. People like him. The ratings were down from the previous week. It didn't matter. And they let everybody know that he was going to cash. It didn't mean a damn thing. It doesn't matter. SmackDown, you just came off this big thing. You had Roman Reigns, Brock Lesnar, all these big things. By the way, Roman Reigns and all that has had an ongoing storyline with Paul Heyman. Will Paul Heyman sign with Brock Lesnar? Will he side with Roman Reigns? They've got a story, a long-term story that builds in a lot of...
That's the only compelling thing that they've got right now.
And the rating went down. No one cares. No one cares. It doesn't matter. By the way, our good friend Becky Lynch now. I didn't forget about you, Becky. Don't worry. I didn't forget about you. Okay, so they finally had the match for Bianca Belair. It didn't last 30 seconds. It should have, but it didn't. Bianca Belair was about to defeat Becky Lynch, thereby rendering this entire garbage pointless. More pointless than Lily, more pointless than Spooky Powers. But don't worry, we got a trump card. Nobody's technically going to lose this match because we have a returning Sasha Banks. Oh my God, the returning Sasha Banks. Are you ready for it though? Let's make sure we show the whole thing properly. So she returns. Is she going to attack Bianca Belair because she's the one who lost the title? Is she going to attack Becky Lynch? She attacks both of them. But remember, everyone in WWE is a moron. I've said this before. Everyone in WWE is an idiot. Because you see, Sasha Banks might want to get revenge on Bianca Belair. That would explain why she attacked her. But she also attacked Becky Lynch, which means she wants the title. Because she didn't have a feud going on with Becky Lynch. Becky Lynch has been off, on maternity leave for a year. So there was nothing really going on between them, but she apparently wants the title. So Sasha Banks being the genius, using brilliant WWE logic, beautiful WWE logic, what she decides to do is attack them both, thereby establishing the possibility of a triple threat match. Now, Dave, just out of curiosity, you have been out of wrestling for a long time, but you started to get back into it. But as a person understanding the wrestling logic side of it, just out of curiosity, do you think it's easier to beat one person or two?
One, obviously.
Yeah. So if you're going to attack somebody, would it not behoove you to wait until they finish beating each other up, one of them wins, and then attack the champion?
Makes sense.
Would that not make more sense?
Correct.
That would be logical. But that is not what she did. She did the opposite of that. She literally set up a scenario where, by the way, from WWE's perspective, I get it. They didn't want either one of them to take the pin for the reasons I outlined before. But you made Becky Lynch look worse than you did the first time, and you proved that Bianca Belair couldn't finish her off quickly either. And you created the stalemate, and now you shoehorn Sasha Banks in the middle of it. So it's like, okay, so are you going to flip the championship only a couple of weeks after you gave it in SummerSlam to Becky Lynch? Which would be stupid. But you can't have Sasha Banks then lose. She did this whole pomp and circumstance to come back and attack them both. It would be bad if she lost. By the way, Bianca Belair has still not been able to win her title back in this attempt. So now she's going to have another match. But she has an excuse if she... Nobody looks good out of this. All of them look bad. So why should I care? It's stupid. It's all stupid.
Yeah, it is. It is.
But don't worry, it has a story. It didn't have Canadian stories. So great. Thanks. I'm glad. I'm very compelled. This is wonderful. You're all idiots. You did... This was easy. Like... Sasha Banks, attack the winner. Whoever wins, attack them. Wait until they're finished and then attack them.
Yeah.
That's it. That's all you had to do. But that means somebody has to take the pin, so they don't want to do that. Well, great. Now you've got a potential triple threat program that doesn't mean a damn thing because Sasha Banks is an idiot, Bianca Belair is incompetent, and Becky now sucks. She got worse between the first match and the second. Now she's a coward. The first time there, she went and challenged the champion at SummerSlam, no problem. And now she's a coward who's running away from Bianca Belair. Why?
Yeah, exactly.
It doesn't make any sense. None of it makes any sense.
No. Because clearly creative is not at their best.
Yeah. They're changing it from week to week, though. You're taking the same character and you're basically rewriting the rules as you go, and none of it makes any sense. So
yeah, but would you rather... I mean, at least supposedly there is some semblance of story there, in the things that you've talked about, right? There is the Roman Reigns, Brock Lesnar, Paul Heyman storyline. Mm-hmm. That is a storyline. There is still kind of sort of Alexa Bliss storyline. Becky Lynch kind of sort of almost has a storyline.
Uh-huh.
All right. If I bring this, I should have brought this up ahead of time because I did not watch Rampage this week. So I
didn't get around to it. I was a little late. Plus, I was doing my other.
I did watch the Bryan Danielson. Let's go there. What is Bryan Danielson's storyline? Right,
Bryan Danielson just
got with the Elite, so he's just going to pick them off one by one. Is that the story?
Yeah.
Because he faced Nick Jackson, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
I could be wrong. I watched that match. That's the only one I saw.
Yeah.
A pretty good match, right? Again, but where does it lead to? Or Sammy Guevara now defeating Miro. Mm-hmm. Like, what's really the storyline there on Wednesday night, right? I mean,
well, okay, so for Sammy Guevara is easier. Sammy Guevara is easier of the two, because initially, you have to remember, Miro's already been a dominant champion for a while.
Yes,
he's already had a really good run as champion, so you were going to have to knock him off with somebody. But basically, Sammy Guevara went in there to kind of defend his buddy Fuego del Sol, who got crushed by Miro twice. So part of the deal was that he went in. And you have a guy who already has been winning matches. Sammy Guevara hadn't specifically gone out for that title up until that moment, but he already had a good win-loss record to be like, okay, you know what? I want you. And I'm not coming out of the blue here in the sense that through the built-in ranking system they have, he's one of the top contenders for that title. You can challenge him based on that. Plus, you beat up my friend, so you know what? Screw you. I'm going to take your title. That's my way of getting back at you. Plus, he did a promo where he specifically said that I'm going to beat you for your title, and then I'm buying Fuego del Sol a car.
Yes,
because he lost his car.
I did see that.
So basically, you're avenging your friend, and then I'm sticking it to you double because I'm taking your champion because you make such a big deal about being God's champion and the whole. So you know what? This is me getting back at you. Plus, he had been winning matches up until that point, and he needed something. You needed to flip it because now Miro had been champion long enough, where now Miro can then spin off into a feud with somebody else, or go into the world title hunt because now he's built up a good run here of championship, and he can do some stuff in the meantime. So that one's easier. The Bryan Danielson one though isn't too complicated because he's new at the company. You're taking advantage of super matches right now. The Elite needs a foil. Because right now because when Bryan Danielson was doing the thing, when he was challenging Kenny Omega, he was being backed up by Christian Cage and those guys as well, who have been kind of semi-feuding with the Elite as well. And Frankie Kazarian and all that, because Frankie Kazarian is the Elite hunter. That's kind of his deal, is that he hates the Elite in general. So anybody who is standing up to them, he's there. Jungle Boy and Luchasaurus are having their issues with the Young Bucks and with Adam Cole because they had the match with Adam Cole and Jungle Boy and everything. So it's one of those things where you're going to have a little bit of that. You're going to basically have some kind of semi-faction warfare, but they're not an official faction. They're just kind of teaming up against the Elite to kind of be there as foils. And you're getting some matches in the middle. But the thing is, and this is kind of my main overriding point. WWE tried to create stories, but the stories don't make any sense. Creating a story just for the sake of, what is story do you, like, let's forget everything. Let's scrap what's happened so far. Bryan Danielson comes in. What is he going to do? What do you want him to do? Like, theoretically, you could do whatever. He just came in. He made you got the big reaction. He's here. You can set up any kind of matches you want. Do you want to jump straight to the Kenny Omega thing? Do you want to set up towards that down the road? We've also got Hangman Page there who had a thing going on with Kenny Omega who might be coming in back soon. So like, where do you position then him to do something? Because you need him to do something. And he's capable of wrestling and you can have him out there having matches. You got to have some matches before any real title aspirations. So what are you doing?
I don't know. I think you've kind of thrown him into the, like, I mean, it's weird because yes, he is a name. Yes, he is an established wrestler. Yes, he's good. But I don't know if, I mean, the Kenny Omega match is a great match. I'm just not sure I want to build to that.
Well, the thing though is the first match builds to the second match. The point is he didn't win the first match. The idea here is the two put on a wrestling clinic. They go time limit draw. Kenny Omega can claim correctly, you didn't beat me, so you're not getting a rematch. And this is the process of Bryan Danielson being like, I am going to get a rematch. I'm just going to have to beat up all your friends then until we get there.
All right.
That buys you time. That's a standard wrestling trope, Dave. That has been used so many times with factions.
For sure. They can build, I guess maybe this isn't the best example to use because it's not there yet, but it could potentially build into it.
You got to start with step one. Step one is you did the initial clash. You established that they can compete at the same level. Because people knew, but they had never seen them lock horns.
Let's take it a different way, Carlos. Let's change up the trajectory here a little bit. All right.
Go ahead.
What storylines are currently taking place in AEW that you fully understand? That are ongoing right now, that haven't ended.
Storylines that are ongoing in AEW that I fully understand.
Yeah. Because like, realistically, like the Sammy Guevara Miro thing, well, that kind of just ended. Fuego del Sol thing probably just ended. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, it's Sammy Guevara's job now to go forward with his.
Bryan Danielson versus the Elite, fine. Mm-hmm. Right. Mm-hmm. Okay. You have the Orange Cassidy versus HFO kind of thing going on.
Yep.
Okay, fine. Do you really have much of anything else? I guess you have the American Top Team. And that feud and wherever that potentially goes as something that potentially could be interesting.
Yeah.
Right. But is like Darby Allin and Sting involved in anything really interesting right now? I would say no.
Darby Allin just confronted MJF on the other show.
Oh, that is true. Right. But okay. Yeah. But I mean, for example, okay, with MJF.
Yeah.
You had the match against Pillman. Mm-hmm. Which is an okay match.
Yeah, he had a couple of matches with Pillman, but yeah.
But Why?
So Dave, you got to remember, you were out of wrestling for a long time. MJF operates as an old school heel. What that means is he basically picks fights with the entire roster. The idea you have to basically, by being a prick, he picks fights with the entire roster. The idea being you always have him in a. The $1 Million Man used to do this. Like if you go old school, the $1 Million Man would literally just walk around being a jerk. Someone would get fed up with it and be like, "Hey, stop doing that garbage you're doing." And then they would feud for a couple of months, and then he'd rotate to the next one. Rotate. The $1 Million Belt existed because he was. Let me finish. The $1 Million Belt came into being, and to Virgil's good fortune, the $1 Million Belt came into being because the $1 Million Man couldn't win the world title, even though he was close. Like they were going to do that, they changed their mind at the last minute. But this was a way of him getting around that. He goes, you know what? I can't seem to get this belt around my waist, so I make my own. And I'm going to treat it like a prestigious championship. And actually, he started to defend it after a while. So they turned it into like a secondary title randomly. But he was able to get that belt over as almost like a legitimate championship there for a run. The point is, the $1 Million Man is so arrogant, he decided to create his own belt. And he goes, forget it. My belt is the real belt then. Which is a classic old school heel way of doing things. MJF, though, is operating in that space. Remember, MJF is 24. The reality is they're looking at him and going like, because assuming you wanted to put him into world title picture right now, let's pretend. And by the way, Darby Allin touched on this, which by the way was a good move on his part during his promo. He said, well, you're that much better than, he's basically alluding to, it's like, you're saying that much better than me. He's like, but I'm the one who's actually won a championship. So it was like a little burn on him acknowledging that in the time he's been there, he's done all this stuff, but you haven't been able to secure a championship yet. So there's two things with MJF. It's him being a general prick. You got these different feuds he's doing. At some point, he will likely be in the title feud, but right now, he doesn't make any sense. You're not going to put him with Kenny Omega. That doesn't make any sense. You need the title to switch hands to somebody like an Adam Hangman Page, and then you could do an MJF Adam Page feud. That would make sense. Bryan Danielson is not getting the world title at any point soon. He may down the road because right now he's too new. You can put him in matches and do things with him, but he's not there yet. That's not his point at this stage. By the way, you want to talk about your storyline, long-term storyline, MJF and Wardlow are going to clash at some point. The help always eventually turns on him because through the course of months,
as Rebel and Jamie Hayter are going to eventually feud with Britt Baker.
They will, but the thing is, Jamie Hayter just got there with that. Rebel's been there for a long time being abused as the help. And also they kind of go hot and cold with that. So Rebel may stick around. Jamie Hayter, though, may do that. But Jamie Hayter's still newer. The seeds of the Wardlow turn are there almost a year back. They started putting the seeds there. There have been a million times where they've done the promo and Wardlow's kind of mildly annoyed with MJF, but it's very subtle. They're there in the promos over the last year. A couple of times recently during the Pillman feud, he went and laid into Wardlow during a bit. He goes, you're going to help me like you helped me during that other one. He still will occasionally like take shots at Wardlow, but it's not all the time. It's not every single week. The idea is you plant the seed slowly on that, because at some point Wardlow, they're going to be ready to send him off as a singles wrestler. Well, in order to be a singles wrestler, that means you got to be your own guy. We're going to detach you because Wardlow already looks like a guy who can be the dude. But right now, as the muscle, you keep him busy as the muscle until you're ready to do the clash. He's got to go and beat the crap out of MJF. That'll be coming.
It will be satisfying.
Yeah, but it's in the back burner. But it's sitting there every time you see Wardlow, and Wardlow gives him like a little side eye during a promo or something. They're still touching on that every single couple of weeks. You'll see it from time to time. You got to look for it, but it's there. He'll look at him sometimes a little bit like side eye. So they are. The thing is, unfortunately, it's not like you have enough TV to be able to do a lot of things. You don't have enough TV to be able to like overtly like, will he turn? You can't be that overt about it. You got to do the little side eye thing. You got to be like, the people who have been watching is like, I've been seeing, once it happens, it'll be like, yeah, I can see that. Wait, remember when he said that in that promo? And remember when he did that thing in that promo? And it's like, there's been a slow escalation to it.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Like, I get your point, but you can't just throw
one
something
thing
in there.
You said, though, in your explanation there, in your defense there, was, well, $1 Million Man would pick on somebody, and then you'd feud with him for a couple months, then you move on to the next one.
Yep.
We don't even get that. We get, like, here's a match, and now I'm on to the next one. Like, MJF Jericho, yes, that was good, and that was a long-term storyline, and that worked out very nicely.
You're not going to get months anymore. Remember when $1 Million Man was doing that, you had 4 pay-per-views a year. You didn't have as many specials. Let me give you a different example, just from the past, same era, just so of comparison. The turn between the time that Macho Man Randy Savage and Hulk Hogan were the mega powers,
Yep.
and when they clashed at WrestleMania 5 was over a year. It took a year to develop that. Macho Man was doing side eyes at Hogan for a year as champion. Macho Man won at WrestleMania 4 with Hulk Hogan's help, but they built on that to get to WrestleMania 5. It took him a full calendar year. In the social media age, nobody has that kind of patience. Nobody. You can't
it's more a product of this generation.
Yes, we don't.
18 to whatever, like 36, say.
Yeah, but here's a lot of it. But also, don't forget something. When I go back to WrestleMania 4 and WrestleMania 5, just to the best of your ability, I have the answer for you. But just for the sake of argument, what was the weekly TV show?
What, the wrestling weekly TV show?
Mm-hmm. This is WWF. Yeah, this is WWF in that time.
Yeah, was it Saturday Night's Main Event?
Nope. Saturday Night's Main Event was a special. They would do that every couple of months. It was a made-for-TV special. It wasn't every week.
Was it Superstars?
It was Superstars. And that was in syndication. That was pre-taped from the arena. They would tape stuff from house shows. And it was Bret Hart against, the Brooklyn Brawler and, the Repo Man versus... When Nitro came out, they would have name guy face name guy. One important thing, maybe this will help as well, bringing it back into modern day. So remember, they don't have a weekly show. They do, but it's like random matches. It's the Bushwhackers versus so-and-so. It was never like, and there was really no cohesion. They'd have a segment or two that would maybe lead into a story, but barely. There were actually barely any stories other than basically a handful. Hogan basically was the only one on the card who got a story most of the time. Different era, but that's the era I grew up in. That's the era you grew up in, but we don't remember that. It's like, actually, Hogan's basically the only one who had a story. Everybody else was just like aimlessly wandering the wilderness of WWF for years. Nobody paid attention. Nobody cared. In today's, though, when we have weekly episodic television, so you have to, it's actually trickier because, yeah, we have weekly episodic, but it's like, okay, you want to try to weave some stuff in. Some stuff has to be slow. Some stuff can be faster. Some stuff has to be a couple of matches and that's it. We move on. Other stuff has to be, because people don't have patience. You want to do the longer term. Like I said, the Wardlow thing is a slow burn. You're doing that one slowly. It's there, but it's in the background. You're not paying attention to it. It's in the back.
Right.
This other one is in your face and it's like happening week by week, but you have to have these different speeds to do it properly. But the problem that you run into is that when you're trying to book the shows like this, people don't have the patience. They want something now, but you got all these people on the roster you could theoretically do something with. They all want a story. If you ask them, they're like, oh, can I have it? It's like, so what do you want? Like, what's the simplest way for me to get you from point A to point B? But a lot of times it's like, okay, so in order to come up with a story for this to go, I have to come up with a justification for the two of you to hate each other. When up until this point, you've had no connection or no particular reason to hate each other. I got to manufacture something. That's why I say sometimes the MJF character is easy because he could just be a jerk to anybody. And there's your justification for sure. But it's not like a blood feud. It's like I insulted your mother. That may not necessarily lead into a long-term blood feud, especially with no particular stakes other than I want to beat you up. Mm-hmm. So that doesn't have the sustained. With Jericho, you had him join the Inner Circle, betray the Inner Circle, make his own faction to face the Inner Circle. It makes it easier to drag it out because you've also got the individual components, right? Sammy Guevara can feud with Shawn Spears. The two tag teams can feud with each other. So you can actually drag it out. And you were able to get segment after segment like that. That's not always easy to do. By the way, there were no world champions involved in that. You were able to have this whole thing going on. Nobody was a world champion. Nobody actually had a belt. But it's rare that you can pull that off. Usually somebody has to be the champion in this. The Elite right now is trying to do that where you've got one champion right now. The tag team champions lost their belts. You got Gallows and Anderson who kind of hang out, but they parade around with the Impact belts, even though they're in AEW, which is always very amusing to me. But you've always got that ability to pull out some of these folks. We'll see how some of it plays out. The only thing I don't want is I don't want you to randomly try to manufacture something. With the Britt Baker thing, the long term is Thunder Rosa. How we get from point A to point B is key. I don't know who the next one is, but I will throw something out at you and bear this in mind.
All right.
Sheeta is promoted for potentially getting her 50th win. So she's back on TV. She's been wrestling on Dark and Elevation. They've been keeping her busy, racking up wins quietly in the background.
Mm.
But now all of a sudden they're going to put her back on Dynamite randomly. It's like, oh, why is she on Dynamite? Well, actually, she's got 49 wins. She's approaching being the first person on the roster to have 50 wins, period. That's actually kind of interesting. Oh, by the way, who's she facing? Oh, the returning Serena Deeb, who at least has some credibility. And she was the NWA Women's Champion, and she had a bunch of really good matches before she had an injury. So she was off. But you get a decent opponent. If she gets her 50th win, all of a sudden it's like, hey, why isn't she a contender for the title? Actually, she is. So it might be your excuse it might be your excuse because you give her a milestone win on TV where more people are paying attention. Suddenly you bring it to her attention. It's like, actually, where's she sitting on the rankings? Oh, she's right there, right at the top of the rankings. Hey, Britt Baker. And then Thunder Rosa's waiting in the wings because right now she's finishing off a thing with Jade and Nyla Rose. They're gonna have a 3-way.
Yep.
Well, after she's done with that business, then you can set her up to then have the Britt Baker thing here coming up. So I may still get my sequencing. It's like the pieces are starting to fall into place. At least Tony Khan's listened to me.
Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah. The thing is, you remember, whenever you come, you're coming from a theater background. Don't forget, professional wrestling is a lot simpler. Professional wrestling is a simulation of a fighting company. They're basically fake UFC. Well, when it's UFC, and one of the Fertitta brothers makes a match, why is so-and-so and so-and-so doing? Well, that guy's ranked number 4, that guy's ranked number 5. Or maybe that fighting style is exciting, and that fighting style is exciting. Maybe they build up to an animosity as we go, but at first it's just a match. You're brought in because, oh, I love that. I watched this person win their last 3. They were awesome. Hey, this guy's kind of interesting. He's had a pretty good run lately. Put them together. You gotta then develop it as you go, but sometimes you just throw people together. That's in real fighting, that happens all the time. In boxing, that happens all the time. Just because of rankings. Having a ranking system that helps you with that, it gives you the basic justification underlying. Because not everybody can just hate everybody because they ran into each other in catering. That's the WWE style. Wait a minute, you took the last potato. That's it, we're fighting. I've actually seen that storyline. That has in fact played out.
That's brutal.
That's what I'm getting at. Like WWE, cites itself with this big storyline thing. It's like, dude, getting the last potato in catering is the lamest reason for a feud that you could possibly come up with. It's not lamer than a killer doll that is no good. Super spooky powers that never work.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
Yeah, that's why I say, like, I got your point, but I wanted to take some time here to give a bunch of examples. It's like, this has always been a struggle. We only remember the really good ones. The Austin McMahon thing is really rare. That's the reason why it's actually very difficult. The initial buildup of the NWO, that's actually really hard to do. Mm-hmm. It's a slow burn.
Well, and for something like that to work, like certain things have to happen. You can't just manufacture it totally.
Yeah.
Some other things have to happen to put that in place where you can manufacture it.
And do the comparison. Like, think about when the NWO started. The first segment was Scott Hall showing up, cutting a promo.
Still talking with the Razor Ramon accent.
Yep. But all he said was he couldn't refer to Razor Ramon. He couldn't say any of that. He couldn't say he was Razor Ramon. All he said, if you go back and check out the promo, all he said was, you know who I am, but you don't know why I'm here. And that was the gist of the... So you're like, oh, why is he here? Blah, blah, blah. And the announcers are playing it up like it. And then he comes back the following week. And then he keeps hanging around. And they're like, what are you doing here? What's your business? What's going on? Mm-hmm. Are you working for the other company? He never says that. And eventually he says, oh, I'm going to bring my friend. In walks in Kevin Nash. Why is he here? What's going on? It took weeks.
Yeah, but it was like, have the mat with the third man.
Yeah, but it took weeks. Yeah. Challenges, attacks. Like, it took a while. But today it would be very difficult. I'll be honest with you. If you tried to do the exact NWO beat for beat, it would be very difficult to pull off because people have no patience whatsoever. They'd be like, why is it? Imagine Bryan Danielson trying to be like the NWO leader 2.0 of the modern age. They'd go in there like, why is Bryan Danielson not wrestling? Those guys didn't wrestle for weeks.
Yeah.
They kept showing up and it's like cutting a promo here and they're interrupting matches, but they wouldn't wrestle anybody until the time came. And then you got the Hogan thing. And then all of a sudden the thing blows up. But it's very difficult to pull. In 2021, good luck pulling that one off. People don't have the patience. They won't wait. They'll just be like, why isn't he doing a thing?
Fair enough. No. Yeah, it's true. All right. I'll give you that, Carlos. I'll give you that.
It's going to be very, like I said, I don't envy Tony Khan. He's got a lot of people on the roster, a lot of very talented people on the roster. There's a million direct. He's almost.
And you want to try. It's going to be hard to keep all those people happy.
Oh, totally. And I guarantee there'll be some people who will want to go, and probably like a Brian Cage or something like that may end up with WWE. Then maybe he can be the recipient of some spookiness.
Ooh.
It's like Brian Cage is now Papa Shango 2.0. Why? Why?
Why not?
Yeah.
As I say, as I look at my autographed Papa Shango drawing over here.
Well, I referenced Papa Shango on my live stream.
Nice.
Y'all missed it. It was great. It was great.
You know what I find interesting? Just randomly.
Good.
WWE 2K20, which we talk about because it's for a variety of reasons. And one day I'm going to make a list of everyone that's in the story and see whether they're still around. Mm-hmm. But Papa Shango is a playable character in that video game. None other of Charles Wright's characters are.
Interesting. But yeah, I will say though, it's something we can keep an eye on. Let's continue to keep an eye on it and kind of see if they're able to plant any more seeds or develop anything else. My thought process is, I think the women's division is actually, I think it's simplified right now because I'll say they were trying to do the thing. I still think the Dark Order thing isn't quite done because it really not too much happened with it. I want to see what they go with it.
You definitely can make more of that.
Oh yeah. But that's what I mean. Like, remember what I said a moment ago? Like, the Dark Order thing's been going on for a while. But so then we're back to things. So do you want the resolution now? Do you want me to just snap my fingers and give you a resolution, or do you want me to like?
I think from what I've seen, I would like to see that more with that.
It could be, yeah. But that's why I said you're going to get different speeds. You're going to get some that you're going to get quicker resolution. You're going to get some that are going to be slower resolution, and you're some that are glacial pace. The MJF Wardlow one has been going on for over a year. It's glacial pace on that one. This other one is going slow. There's another one that's going faster. There's the MJF normal feuds. You're like, oh, but those are just a match or two. We're getting different speeds. It's literally what I just said.
Yeah.
So I get it, but we'll have to kind of let it. Unfortunately, WWE is trying to do the other side of it. That's why I gave the contrast. I go, well, you're getting lots of story. How's that working out for you?
Exactly. Yeah.
A bad story is worse than no story for me. Like at this point, it's like, you know what? At least if you came up with something that's reasonable, I can go with you on this.
Mm-hmm. I think that's fair.
But give me something I can work with. Don't give me resurrected demons that go, ow, my knee.
That's fair.
That's not gonna work for me. But yeah, we'll see going forward. I'll be curious because right now we're into October, and I think they're building up for the next big show is going to be November. So that one's full gear. So you're going to need to start filling out that card. One more point I'll make real quick because we touched on it briefly. Don't expect, this is the ratings thing that I was talking about earlier. So I would say, don't expect ratings to do too much up or down. WWE has established a certain baseline. They could make a bad show for the next 50 straight weeks, and it's going to hover right around where it is. Mm-hmm. You'll hotshot a thing. Maybe you'll get a couple percentage points because going into the go-home show, SmackDown was down. Coming off the pay-per-view, which nothing really interesting happened, SmackDown was up. Then this past week, SmackDown was down. They're building towards a Brock Lesnar Roman Reigns match. No one cared. They did the first day of the draft. The draft. Ooh. What did that do for the ratings? Down. So what's the difference? Who cares? Story, no story. Ratings up, ratings down. It makes no difference. Who shows up? Doesn't matter. It'll only affect things for a week or two. The CM Punk effect worked really well for the first show back because anticipation. Rampage is always going to get a lower rating because of the time slot. And I can actually give you a quantifiable thing because I did a little research myself just to double check. Because Rampage is a 10 o'clock time slot. 10 o'clock on Friday is the normal start time. When they did the 2-hour one, the second hour was 11 to midnight.
Yep.
Which isn't a great time for most people. Like, you have kids. Is 11 p.m. on a Friday night sound good to you?
Yeah, no.
That's a tough go. That's what a PVR is for.
I've seen 11 p.m. on a Friday night.
But that's what a PVR is for. Like at best, that's what a PVR is for. Like you.
Yeah, I watched that show the next day.
Correct.
In various intervals.
And I think a lot of folks are in that boat. That second hour is tough. And it was also the fourth hour that live crowd was there. So for energy wise, they were obviously down compared to where they had been in the first half of the show live on Wednesday. Right. Mm-hmm. Second thing, when you see that. And I'm going to give you tangible numbers. I do a live stream, right, on my channel where I start at 9 p.m. Eastern time on Friday. Okay?
Yeah.
Do you want to guess at what time? There's a 30-minute window. I've gone back 6 or 7 weeks where it's been pretty consistent. There's a 30-minute window that is the height of live viewers that I get in a night. And that's been slowly increasing over time, but it's been pretty consistent the last, 2 months. There's a 30-minute window between what time and what time do you think that my audience generally peaks its highest?
Like 9:15, 9:45?
Nope.
When?
Between 10:30 and 11.
Interesting.
That's approximately, now there's a little bit of oscillation, a couple of minutes here or there, but within that window, generally. Now, my audience actually stays pretty good for a while going in because we're just hanging out chatting, and the chat likes to hang out and chat in there.
Yeah.
And I correspond with the chat, so they're engaged in it. A fair number of people do stick around. This past week we did really well because people were engaged almost all the way through. We did almost 6 hours, which is, crazy. But that half hour window or so, generally speaking, is the peak. Funny enough, that's the last half hour of the first hour of Rampage. By the way, if you do that, if you go back to that episode where the rating was a little disappointing, you were kind of mentioning it didn't move too much. That's the average between the 2 hours. The first hour was over 150,000 more than the second hour.
Mm.
Isn't that weird? How it falls almost in precisely the time slot that I just said. More people are able to hang in there between 10 and 11. You can have it. It's still late. It's still a late start, but they can hang in with you until about 11 o'clock. Then you better give them, the resurrection of Christ, because otherwise the rating's going to drop. And I'll be honest with you, they could give you the resurrection of Christ, and maybe they do a 1-5. And people would be like, but it's the resurrection of Christ. It's like, yeah, but it's kind of late on a Friday. Maybe they'll catch it on DVR. Like, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I think that's a good point. Your point is well taken, Carlos.
Yeah, there's a limit. WWE has learned this. You can try all the gimmicks. You can try all the things. There's only so much you can do. We're in an era where people are not going to get moved by one thing. If you want to develop like momentum, it takes time. Dynamite and Rampage, they've actually moved the time slot a lot of different times because they've been experimenting. They're trying to find the best time and day to put it. They have a network partner that's willing to work with them on this. But here's the thing. The demographic they're looking at, they were number 1 or number 2 on the night. Right. So the rating was quote unquote low, but they had basically the highest demographic rating in the 18 to 35, 18 to 40.
Yeah, which is really what they care about.
It's what the advertisers care about. So if you're consistently producing for me number 1 in the night or number 2 in the night in the most important demographic, and I'm the network, and that's what I'm selling ad time for, we're good, bro. The overall ratings number is a nice to have, but on a Friday night, don't expect too much. Especially when it was a pre-tape show too. It was a pre-tape. Yeah. If you really wanted to know the results, you could have known it on Wednesday night. And they still got a decent rating. The rating didn't go super down from the previous week. For a pre-tape show where you could have known the results, on a 2-hour show that's super late into a Friday night, where you could have gotten all the results, and they didn't pack their best stuff. They packed their best stuff on the Dynamite. They gave you some okay stuff on the Rampage, and the rating still held pretty solid. That actually sounds like a win to me. That's not bad.
No, fair enough.
Yeah. I think they were more pleased than you might think. So it's one of those ways. But I say week to week, don't worry about the ratings because they can't book for rating, because if they do that, they'll fall into the WCW trap. Because Nitro became big with the NWO angle, and it became big by offering main event caliber. That was Eric Bischoff's promotional tagline. We'll give you, pay-per-view quality matches on TV, which sounds great. And in 1996, 1997, 1998, we ate it up as fans watching. But here's the problem. If you give me pay-per-view quality matches on every single show on TV, week after week, for years, is it special?
No.
The reason why WWF worked that model so long, and Saturday Night's Main Event would draw huge monster... Back in the day, in the 80s, Saturday Night's Main Event would draw 20 million viewers. 20 million! Why? Because it was special. It was a super card. Hulk Hogan's actually facing someone who's not the Brooklyn Brawler or Repo Man? What? Because they would face jobbers all the time. They'd face and then beat them in a minute and a half. And that's all you'd get on WWF. Go back to WWF Superstars. That's what you get.
Yeah.
When the Monday Night Raw initially, it was the same. So Raw ratings weren't that hot. They were okay. But then Nitro showed up and said, we're going to give you Lex Luger and Sting in the main event. We're going to give you Hulk Hogan and Ric Flair in the main event. And you're like, isn't that normally a pay-per-view match? Yes, it is. But you're getting it on Monday.
Yeah.
It was cool until, this is the 30th time they've had this match.
Yep.
Not so special. Yeah, so Tony Khan has to find that balance because we're in 2021. We don't have the patience anymore. You can't go and you can't be, Darby Allin versus Kenny Omega in every match. That ain't going to work.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you got to occasionally throw in a couple of those jobber matches. And you gotta mix it up. Give them some free wins against lower competition that's just learning, but less Julia Hart. Not until she learns how to wrestle a little more.
All right.
Bless her heart, but I need less Julia Hart on Dark and Elevation. She can have all the matches she wants.
But I think they've kind of figured that out.
I'm hoping, but I'm like, man. And Anna Jay will be a star, but right now her wrestling's a little bit rough. She's not had a good time since coming back. So they paired her with Ty Conti, and I'm like, okay, look, I know you got two hot girls here, I get it, but Ty Conti has actually been really good. Like she's actually been on a really good run. Now she's gonna help because they're friends, so that'll be great. But it's like, oh, Anna Jay, it's like you're running in slow motion right now. It's like no, not on the main show. No. Not right now. But at least they're trying stuff. Like, I'm fine with it if you're trying stuff, but you're going to have to mix in some of those other elements. We'll see. Cool.
Fair enough, Carlos.
So there you go. So story's bad until further notice. We'll let you know when the stories are okay.
Right. So story's bad, but still we want more Supernatural and more dolls.
Supernatural spooky stuff, Dave. This is a spooky season. It's October.
Are you not looking forward to Survivor Series doll versus doll match?
Did you say Survivor Series?
Series.
Which I agree. I gotta play back the audio on that because I heard sillies.
It could have been a Freudian slip. I don't know. You have to play the tape back and see. I'm not sure.
Look, doll versus doll, that would draw money. It was like, what is this? CGI?
Don't put it past them. Bro,
what if that's what finally gets WWE over the hump? Why did you do a 4-7? It was what is it? Charlie versus Lily, right?
There you go.
Yeah, Charlie versus Lily, main event. They drew a 5-9. They haven't done that since the Monday Night Wars. It was like, are we really doing doll versus doll now? Yeah, that's the thing.
I think they should do it, man. Book it, and we're out. WWE, you can have that for free.
Thank God they're not going to pay for it. Okay, so one more thing. I think that'll be it for today. Right. One more thing before we wind it down. I did, it was funny. I'll quickly reiterate for you. On the live stream, I did get a chance to say speaking of the spooky season, appropriately timed. So we had a guy on there, Brad, who runs a card shop and does, PSA Canada. He actually does bulk submissions and stuff. Great guy. A lot of great stories. He used to play junior hockey and stuff. He actually played junior hockey with Eric Daze.
Okay.
Now, you'll like this. So I'll give you two quick stories about this. Number one, I'll see if I can find the spot on the live stream and I'll send you the link because you got to listen to the story. There is a story. There are two stories that he gave in there. One of them, though, involves Matthew Good and Ric Flair and Dale Earnhardt Jr.
Okay, I'm in. Please send me that link.
I'm not explaining anymore. That's all I'm saying to you. I will send you the clip. You can listen to it yourself.
I will.
And then because of the thing. Oh, and it involves Bubbles from Trailer Park Boys.
Amazing.
All in the same story. That is not a lie. That is, in fact, all true. That was the part of the story. But because of the Bubbles thing, and apparently he's a big fan of Molson Canadian, which of course I think is swill. And I told him as much.
I agree.
Bless him, but it's just swill. But it did lead me to a good story about the spooky season, because one of the things that back in Guelph, and you know the story a little bit. So this is the expired Wellington story.
Okay.
You remember that one?
I do.
So it was when I went to Dave and Charlie's place, the thing, and then Oaks tried to drink a cup of the expired Wellingtons. And
I'm pretty sure I was there for that party at some point.
It could be, yeah. But my favorite part was, and where it still played into the story a little bit, was because the Molson and the Bubbles thing, the guy that Ogs stole beer from was dressed as Bubbles. And the beer he had was Molson Canadian.
I do remember that because he talked about that beer being stolen all night.
Yes, exactly. And that was my point. But it was funny because I said, it was like, well, actually, this story kind of plays in. So full circle. And then I explained it. It was like, seriously? Yep. Guy dressed like Bubbles with the Molson Canadian. And then Oak stole it. And I knew he had stolen it. And then I was so desperate for like beer. I'll accept the Molson Canadian at this point. So I just asked him, do you mind if I? He goes, of course you asked. It's just some people do.
I do. I remember that too. I remember the thing.
Yeah. Great.
Yep, I remember that.
And I just sit there and look at Oaks. So that was my contribution to the story because it didn't. But Matthew Good, man, we got Matthew Good, we got Dale Earnhardt, we got Ric Flair,
and Bubbles,
brah.
There's your CanCon for tonight, people.
And that doesn't even count. And that doesn't even count the other story that may involve a Learjet.
Ooh.
It did involve a Learjet.
Send me the link.
Yep. So now you know. There you go. Y'all can look forward to. That's part of the greater Carlos multiverse. All this shit happens. What do you want from me? It is what it is. Anyway, so that's it for us this time around. We'll be back for episode 113 Hopefully, either some combination of AEW or WWE will give us some fun. Although it was fun making fun of their creative. Their creative was real bad. So
it always is, man.
Look, spooky, scary stuff. Hey, October. Ooh.
Expect more of it.
Yeah, great. I'll come back in costume next week as someone who cares. So anyway, so that'll be it for us this time around. You can catch the audio version on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, wherever you get your podcasts. For whatever reason, I completely forgot. I got 2 in the moment. I completely forgot about it. But anyway, the point is, wherever you can get your podcast audio, great. Otherwise, Unnecessary Nonsense Podcast YouTube channel, where you can see the facial expressions that I had while I ran down this stupidity. Spooky, scary things are now bad. None of them work. Alexa Bliss needs to go back to Hogwarts. The demon needs to be shelved. Well, let's move on, and maybe Papa Shango needs to come back because that's apparently our only hope.
All right, let's do it.
Awesome. So that's it for us. We'll catch you in the next episode of the Unnecessary Nonsense Podcast.